I am very excited about our next guest. This is Slavoj Zizek. He is a philosopher and a friend of Assange and a major advocate for WikiLeaks. Welcome, Slavoj. Thank you for coming.
I'm proud to be here. Thanks.
Why do you support WikiLeaks?
It's not just my personal sympathy for Assange. It's, well, we don't have time to go, if not into philosophy, into general social theory. But I think that WikiLeaks, for me, is a symbol of a crucial struggle for emancipation today. Our old idea of emancipatory movement is either you have mass popular protests like Podemos, Occupy Wall Street, or you have political organizations and so on. But there is a third level of the struggle. If you just read our popular media, you can easily see from different news stories to what extent our lives are already registered, controlled by what Julian Assange describes so perfectly as this combination of big private corporations like Facebook, Google, and state security agencies. I mean, what they know, what they can do, it's breathtaking. What we do, what we shop when we shop our emotional reactions and so on and so on, everything is registered. I'm not paranoid about this. I'm just saying that it's absolutely crucial that we become aware of it and that we learn to strike back. And we shouldn't be soft or gentle here. This is a big struggle, and we should strike back through hackers, our own technicians, well-trained people, and so on. This is also a large technical operation. Now, my friends tell me, but are you aware to what extent our daily lives are run through digital machinery, electricity, food distribution? Do you want to destroy this all? I'm saying, no. My fear is that those in power are getting ready to interrupt this, to put at a standstill this digital universe if it will fit them in a time of unrest and so on and so on. I don't trust them. It's absolutely crucial that people become aware of two things. First, how our daily lives are controlled and regulated through immense, vast digital machinery. And point two, who controls, regulates, limits this machinery. It's typical that most of the news that we hear about this are usually, oh, do you know what they're doing in China? They are already introducing some grading of all citizens, your patriotic status, and so on and so on. Yes, but the same thing in a more soft, invisible way is happening here with us. So again, I repeat it, we are usually caught in this duality. Either we do it Podemos style, just we follow popular unrest of the people, or we do it the old-fashioned way. We need a political organization who elaborates programs. These two levels are not enough. A third level is necessary, and this is what Julian triggered. So as an old Maoist, even if but they shouldn't, finish off somehow with him. You know, Mao Zedong said in that great moment of opening in, I think, 56, let the 100 flowers blossom, you know. Our answer should be, let the 100 WikiLeaks blossom. We need WikiLeaks for China, WikiLeaks for Russia, and so on. Otherwise, are we aware? This is what shocked me. Now I go more personal towards Julian. I was so shocked at the low level of the campaign. Like Donald Trump is almost a kind and polite guy if you compare the level of the campaign against Julian. You know, it began with pure political considerations, like Didn't they endanger lives of our agents and so on? For whom are they working? Is Julian on the payroll of Putin? Whatever you want. Then it was one level lower, these personal accusations, the unfortunate documentary of, what's the girl's name, Laura Poitras or whatever. You know this, he's authoritarian, he's paranoid. Well, all I can say to that is that, sorry, but if at that point the boss of the CIA says that my arrest is his priority, I would be a little bit conspiratorial and paranoid also. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And all that stuff about, you remember the first years were the Swedish accusations against him. Here, I think, I have a great criticism here of the Me Too movement. Not that, I don't know, I wasn't there, that a priori Julian is blameless. But what I'm saying is that, my God, some of this new feminist movement, couldn't they say, sorry, we are fighting a great fight for women's liberation, new voice of women, and we will not allow our struggle to be so blatantly manipulated, put in service of a frantic activity of those empires to destroy Julian. Why didn't they? I'm not expecting from them to defend him totally, but at least to say, sorry, it's a clear-cut case of political manipulation. So second was character assassination, and the lowest, it disappeared. It was just, maybe you remember, for a couple of days in the media. Do you remember that a couple of days, all of a sudden, there was news that the real reason Ecuadorians in the embassy want to get rid of Julian is that he doesn't wash regularly and that he smells bad. I mean, here they went even lower than Trump. Trump is a model of civility and politeness. Sorry. And what really shocked me, you know, is how people are, sometimes I get the impression that all this continuous propaganda, this little doubt, was he connected with Putin and so on and so on. Listen, the story here is much more complex. First, what one has to repeat again and again. With all this story about fake news, cheating, and so on, as far as I know, WikiLeaks was never caught, even at the tiny point of spreading fake news and so on. It proved to be the only reliable one. Point two, Putin and so on. And usually then people mention Snowden, you know. But I know, I was in contact with Julian, I know that, you remember when Snowden was caught in Hong Kong, their first choice was not Russia, one has to repeat it. When people say, oh, but Snowden chose Russia, now he gave them all the secret information. Sorry, Snowden didn't want to go Russia. They were desperately trying in those 10 days, whatever window of time they had, anywhere in the West to put him. They tried Denmark, they tried all Netherlands, Sweden, all those countries, Norway, who pride themselves for being radically democratic. None wanted them. And Snowden, even now from time to time, gives a voice of dissatisfaction. So let's not, and also what we learned from the affair of Cambridge Analytica is that no, you don't need Putin. It was the Putin. If by Putin we mean some secret agent who twisted, influenced the American election, sorry, it wasn't Putin. It was Cambridge Analytica, well rooted in the West, nothing to do with Putin, and it was Hillary Clinton. And here, if you allow me just the last point, what horrifies me is how this, the saddest example for me is now a newspaper like Guardian, which professed itself to be the voice still within the establishment, but of the left as much as you can go. But I was so surprised now a couple of days ago, yesterday, I read a ferocious attack on Susan Sarandon, claiming her practically to work for Donald Trump, Why? Because this is my big reproach to Clinton liberals. They attack Trump all the time and so on and so on, but they never ask the critical question. Hillary Clinton had practically the victory in her pocket. Why did she lose? The name of the trouble was here Bernie Sanders. And I think what cost Hillary the election was the brutal way she liquidated the left wing in her own party. I know literally hundreds of people who told me, I wanted to vote for Bernie, I would be ready to switch to Hillary, but when I saw how brutally they outmaneuvered him, sorry, I will not vote for Hillary. So you see, that's the saddest thing. The way, let's call it liberal left center, turned against Julian and made him even a secret tool of Trump, of Putin, whatever. We shouldn't fall into this trap. This is the most dangerous aspect of the big campaign against Julian. But I talk too much, please. You are my interrogator here.
No, I kind of see my job here as basically like a drummer. You know, the less you notice me, the better. You're the talent
the
here.
The drummer sets the rhythm, nonetheless. The drummer sets the rhythm. You know, the drummer is the secret.
I like your rhythm. Your rhythm is good.
In our so-called post-authoritarian times, no, it's no longer fashionable to call boss a boss. We like more neutral names. One popular name is coordinator, you know. I'm not the boss, I just coordinate. You have all the power of the boss, but it sounds more polite. So be my coordinator, okay?
Well, I like what you're saying. I mean, yeah, they smeared Susan Sarandon for advocating Jill Stein. I was all aboard the Jill Stein train when that was all going down. I don't know a single Jill Stein voter, not one, who would have voted for Hillary Clinton had Jill Stein not been an option. That side of the political spectrum was completely disgusted with the neoconservative, warmongering, oligarchic, coddling nature of the Democratic Party, and there's no way they would have ever gone with Clinton.
Yes, but you see, here it's for me what I always repeat, and people even accuse me of working for some kind of a weird coalition between, let's say, Bernie Sanders and Steve Bannon or whatever. No, I claim that the alt-right is very intelligently exploiting the failure of the mainstream democratic left to address, we all know what's the story, ordinary people's concerns and so on and so on. It's not only in the United States, it's the same in France, it's the same in Germany, it's the same in Italy. And the result is what? The result is simply the gradual disappearance of the moderate social democratic left. In Germany, it's practically out. In France, Socialist Party, it's practically out. In Italy, it's practically out. Even in Spain, Podemos was a heroic attempt, but now they somehow lost momentum. And for a very precise reason, which makes me sad. Podemos was a consciously leftist populist party. You know, their motto was, forget about big ideological programs, listen to the ordinary people, to their real concerns and demands. Now I will say something horrible. I don't trust ordinary people, not because they are bad, but because their daily lives are caught in ideology. Sorry, but if you go to a country like Hungary, it's easy to attack Orban as a dirty manipulator, but probably the majority is authentically behind Orban. The concerns of everyday people there is, we have too many immigrants, they pose a threat to our way of life, and so on and so on. So it's not automatically that ordinary people with their concerns are right. Ideology is not some edifice up there in complex books and so on. Ideology is our daily life, how we experience our daily lives. Imagine an ordinary worker, he loses his job, and he's told it's because of the outsourcing, immigrants, sorry, immigrants can do the work cheaper than you, and so on and so on. And of course, he perceives immigrants as a potential threat. I mean, this is why the next thing I don't trust this politically correct moderate left is now it will be very problematic. I warn you what I will say now. You know, it is this concern with we shouldn't publish anything critical about immigrants because it will be exploited by the anti-immigrant enemies. And then there was this scandal in Rotterdam scandal 2-3 years ago in the United Kingdom. I think that precisely immigrants, they don't need this patronizing protection. We will not mention anything bad about you, we want to protect you. We are treating them like children, and we leave to the anti-immigrant alt-right the entire space. The problem is to confront, the task is to confront all these problems, to confront real problems. There are differences in our and some of the immigrants, at least way of life. We need here an open debate, not this paranoid protectionism. I know many people from Arab countries, black from United States, Native Americans. Incidentally, this may amuse you. My Native American friends much prefer to be called Indians. You know why? They say Native Americans, it's so patronizingly racist, you know, like native nature. Ah, we are nature, you are culture. So they told me, we prefer to be called Indians, at least our name is a sign of white man's stupidity, who thought when they discovered America. What I want to say is that we shouldn't patronize them. All my friends hate so much this patronizing attitude. You know, like with some white liberals, when you mention Native Americans, they say, oh, they have a holistic attitude, they don't exploit nature, we are white imperialists, we just brutally intervene into nature, and so on and so on. I had a wonderful meeting in Missoula, Montana, years ago with a Native American who showed me a text he wrote. He was an academic, where he demonstrated, he said, but we Native Americans burned more forests and killed more buffaloes than all white people combined, you know. He wasn't a masochist. He just wanted to say, he detected in a very nice way how to paint the other as kind of angelic, you know, they cannot be evil and so on. It's a refined version of racism also. Why do I mention this apropos Julian? Because I think that this politically correct distrust of him, that maybe he was that violent, he's a male chauvinist, blah, blah, blah. This is maybe one of the main factors why many people, unfortunately, in principle, they support him, but with a proviso, you know, like, oh my God, but nonetheless, what if he is what if he is an unpleasant person? No, I can tell them, I spent hours talking with him. He is quite a normal guy. You know, we don't talk with him all the time politics. We talk about TV series. We had a long debate on The Man from the High Castle, you know, that old Philip Dick classic, which is now a new series, no? And he gave me some wonderful insights about all this and so on. I had a great debate about Handmaid's Tale with him, where we all, both of us, expressed a deep distrust of Handmaid's Tale. You know why? Because it's very refined and perverted. I hope most of our listeners know Handmaid's Tale. I will not lose time going into that. But what's so horrible is that although, of course, it's a terrifying portrayal of the United States occupied by some Christian fundamentalists and so on, but forget about the official message. Me and all my friends, even women, are fascinated by the details of the organization. You know, how they terrorize women, they shouldn't do this, they control them like that. And in a more subtle way, you are seduced by it. You are not really horrified, I claim. The majority of my friends secretly enjoy watching that universe. It's a pseudo-critique. Of course, it's consciously meant as a critique. But you know, the way it is a convincing portrait, it cheats. It cheats in the sense that the message is enjoy it and you can feel safe, because officially it's against the oppression of women and so on and so on and so on. The other thing where I agree with Julian is the impotence of American liberal left. Look, Trump is occupying the space. The way it looks now, if there will not be some big economic or military catastrophe, he will win re-election even and so on. And what do we get now? We get what I call Jon Stewart, John Oliver, and so on. This we just laugh all the time. We catch him at his meaningless vulgarities and so on and so on. But all this, in the long term, works for him, I claim. The more we catch him with his vulgar jokes and so on, we think, oh my God, you see, now people will see. No, his supporters know this, and this vulgar human side, this is what they like about Trump, and so on. I think that as Julian wrote, it was already a year ago, a very good text, where he simply said, if you want to beat Trump, a new, in the Bernie Sanders style, American left should re-emerge. That's the only way to beat Julian Trump. Otherwise, and my God, I created a monster now, Julian Trump. Okay, Donald Trump. What I'm saying is that this is the United States, this is Europe, and so on. If things go on like this, then the choice will be between vulgar alt-right and a more civilized new right, like in Austria, the new chancellor, now already for half a year, Sebastian Kurz, which adopted all the anti-immigrant premises, but does it in a much more civilized way, and so on and so on. I mean, I really worry. And out of this global worry comes my support for Julian Assange. It's not just a humanitarian question. Look, there is a guy in the Ecuadorean Embassy and we should help him. Of course we should, but it's not just a humanitarian problem. It's, my God, it's the fate of us all there, literally, I mean. And that's why,
so where do you
with all the notes about Julian, how his book, which is, I think, in some sense, his greatest achievement, his book on Google, that's his intellectual achievement. He was the first to detect the dark potential of this new media. You know why? Because, and this is ideology at its most dangerous, because when we are manipulated or using simply, okay, I don't want to be accused of moralism, when we participate in Google, Facebook, and so on, we experience ourselves as utterly free. I just do whatever I want, I float freely, I do pick up this, pick up that. But this is the most dangerous non-freedom, which is experienced as even the most radical freedom. And this is my answer to those who claim, but why does Julian focus so much on United States and Western Europe? What about Putin, Russia? What about China? I have one very simple answer here. I'm no friend of Putin. My God, I was engaged ferociously. You remember 2 years ago, the Pussy Riot scandal. I was engaged there. My books are now heavily censored. Some publishers already chickened out in China and so on. But you know what's the point? In those countries, people know that they are not free. Nobody has the illusion in China that internet is free. All the time things are censored, and sometimes, since Julian likes new humor, good jokes, maybe I can tell our viewer this, that they do it sometimes too automatically, like around Tiananmen date, when they were celebrating anniversary, the Chinese censors simply prohibited, blocked on the web the use of the word protest, assuming that most of it would refer to Tiananmen. And then an English professor had a wonderful misadventure. He was in China flirting with a lady in England. And since they were both literary theorists, well educated in Shakespeare, he wrote to her using a phrase in Shakespeare, because in Elizabethan England, even now you have traces of it. The word protest meant also I publicly declare, like you say to a lady, I protest my love for you. He did this and his message was blocked. You know? So the laughter was that if he were to say, I want to screw the brain out of you or whatever vulgar thing, it would have been okay if you quote Shakespeare as a love declaration. But you know, on the other hand, as already hinted, I'm afraid of this eternal reference to China, how they control and so on. The good thing is that they're doing it in a much more open way. It doesn't leave you any illusions. The dangerous thing is a slave who doesn't even know that he or she or it, whatever, is a slave, who still think that he, she, it is a free being, that your very freedom, you buy books on Amazon and so on, you watch TV. I was now told, not by a fanatical leftist, but by a lady who owns a big company, Pipa Maelstrom in England, or a drone company. How do you know that most of the big flat screen TVs that you buy now have a camera which doesn't only register the obvious thing, what program do you want to watch, how much, but also it has this basic face recognition of expressions, intensity, what emotions you experience. We are so totally controlled, and this is what is going on now. People don't even notice. It's a new arms race. Mostly it's digitalizations. All big powers now are building mega computers, like with unthinkable power. And of course, as usual, we know here only a story from China. We are probably doing the same. In China, they boast about it. They knew that a certain stadium with 60,000 people, there is a mass murderer, where he escaped after his last murder. They put a satellite above the stadium, and the satellite was able to identify all 60,000 people, and the satellite was also able to measure the intensity of their psychic state, and they correctly presumed that the murderer will be still overexcited, and they caught him. This is how they caught him. So it's incredible what they already can do. We are in the middle of this new race for total control. Then better not think what is going on in the military use of biogenetics, controlling our mind, making different experiments with different gases and so on to whatever, to immobilize you and so on. Things are happening, and the way WikiLeaks enter here, in a way, Julian was right, although it was a little bit false. that he said, I don't do politics directly. You, the people, should do politics. My job is just to bring out to you all the necessary data so that you can decide. I mean, with all the overflow of data about basic things, we know less and less. For example, did you know? I didn't. Till I heard it now. From whom? From an editor of Economist, not from some crazy leftist, that all the big powers are now spending immensely on arms. The Arctic area is turned into a mega place for building, I don't know, fortresses, digital networking there and so on. So that this is a good advice if you have, I don't have them, some millions to invest or what. Do it fast, because big powers have silently decided to risk inflation. They are spending for rearmament and digitalization of the army such incredible amounts of money, and that you cannot do it any longer with new debt, taxation, and so on. You can do it the standard way. You print money. And they are consciously risking inflation. So crazy things are happening. We should simply know about it. For example, did you notice? Trump said it, it was noticed a little bit, it disappeared. A key data, you know that even in the worst years of Cold War, they had an agreement. Outer space should remain out of armed forces. Prohibited to everyone. Okay, you have planes still, but above outer space, you don't militarize it. Now, Trump, it was in the media, but just a notice, a small item of news which disappeared, that Trump ordered the constitution of the, after infantry, navy, and air force, of the first unit of the US Army, Space Force, and so on. So many things are happening, and it's, you know, the genius of today's censorship is that you don't do it. Chinese are stupid, they're still doing it too much by simply prohibiting. No, you do it by overflow of information. You know, they know very well that the large majority of people who has time, you find everything on the web, but who has time to go into it, and so on and so on. And the lack of WikiLeaks was that they were enough in the public eye that if they put it out, people noticed it, you know. So again, even independently of what will happen of WikiLeaks, I claim I cannot imagine a further struggle for emancipation without consciously organizing this battle for who controls the digital media. And here is what WikiLeaks did, I think. That's how I explain this absolute incredible revenge, spirit of revenge.
Yeah.
Like, we will catch him, whatever it takes, and so on and so on. And the saddest thing, again, my greatest moral disappointment, okay, you expect this from right-wingers and so on, is newspapers like Guardian and so on, which now again joined the campaign. You remember when they cut him off, there was a big comment in Guardian, I don't know the name, who it was, who said basically Assange is to blame himself for what is happening to him, and so on and so on. You know, this.
Yeah, or like it was the only thing keeping him there is pride, I think was the headline.
Yeah. I mean, are we aware of the obscenity of this? Like, what fucking pride? The guy is there fighting now, probably literally for his life. He is fighting for his sanity, and so on and so on. And it's so obscene. You remember that British member of the court lady who rejected his complaint? This incredible cynicism. Didn't she say once, how can he say that he doesn't have enough fresh air and sun, but I saw him on the balcony, he can go to the balcony and get some sun.
Because he can do that once a year, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And now it really worries me, this isolation, how they even literally, what kept him alive was the voice, the link, and now they cut him off. And I think, okay, it's good maybe that I am not a terrorist. I underline 3 times what I will say now, that I don't support what I will say now. But in my fantasy world, I sometimes fantasize, couldn't they simply kidnap some American diplomats or British and say, I must say, I'm against it. This is the usual way you say, I'm against it, but I would understand it if it happened, because it's so incredibly brutal. In the previous conversation, the lady said how the United States Department of Justice, how they are doing it. That's their game. People should know this. Like many people thought that Julian was accused of rape. No, he wasn't. They couldn't even move to this level. Then, and it's again and again this false story that is coming out. This basically misinformation, and it's very difficult to fight in this way when you have media against yourself and so on and so on. So when somebody told me, but nonetheless, Julian collaborated with Russia today, no? I told him, okay, give him 1 hour a week on CNN, and I'm sure he would gladly exchange Russia today for CNN. We have to look the reality of the situation. It's pretty depressing. I'm not a big optimist here. The action against Assange was a very dirty action, combining psychological pressure, character assassination, vulgar rumors, and so on and so on. It's people should become aware of this.
Yeah, but it also makes perfect sense that they're doing it. I mean, this is all, their whole thing that they're doing to him is controlling the narrative. They're manipulating the narrative against him. They're stacking the narrative because he threatens.
Even here, I think that maybe their fury blurs them. Because once I always like to play, I'm evil, in this sense that I like to play devil's advocate. And I ask myself, let's say that I'm a representative of American secret organizations, and okay, they're not secret, but dealing with information, NSA and so on, I would have tried to do it in the opposite way. Portray Julian as a confused guy who means well, but was tragically misused, all the sympathy for him and so on. I would easily guarantee him no arrest. I think it would have worked much better, don't you think? In a subtle way, to try to demobilize him without any direct pressure, and then do brutal things more discreetly, I mean, I don't think we've seen the worst. Now, I know this is dangerous what I'm saying. I'm playing devil's advocate now, But you know what really made me...
I mean, it's too late now. They're already doing the draconian things.
Yes,
so you can...
but you know what? You know what is one of the saddest things that Julian told me? All other heroes of freedom of movement, speech, how when he became, Julian, too hot, dangerous, softly withdrew. For example, Julian told me, I'm sorry, it's not meant in a racist way, but I don't know that Myanmar lady who is now back in power, who was 10 years in house prison, got Nobel Prize, but then she made peace with military powers. You know who I'm talking about, no? Myanmar.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I just, the name's not coming to me.
Yeah, I just don't know. I'm very sorry. I apologize sincerely. Julian told me he contacted her if he can get, as another person who was in house prison for a long time, no answer. She didn't want to get involved in it in any way. You know, this is people whom I really don't like. Like once they made their own private pact with authority and re-enter the scene, they prefer to obliterate, to forget. But you know, where I think we should also be, what do you think, a little bit self-critical here? Like, did we make a mistake anywhere? I hoped for or expected more mass resistance, more famous, big, so-called, but we should ruthlessly use them here, big names. But the third thing is that whenever there is some public proclamation from Julian, you get the same bunch. You get Chomsky, this, that, whatever, you know. The only nice surprise for me was that Alfonso Cuarón, you know, the movie director, he allowed his name to be used in support of Julian.
Roger Waters too.
Yeah. But these are, as they say in Casablanca, the usual suspects. You know, you expect them. I expected a little bit more. You know, a little bit more. But you know what I will tell you? I will not name names, but I met some people, British actors and so on, you know. And privately, they confess to me they are afraid, like this can affect badly their status on the American market and so on, whatever, and so on and so on. So it's not as innocent as this may appear.
Yeah, well, I mean, these people are all to some extent need to ingratiate themselves to the establishment that WikiLeaks threatens in order to guarantee their continued success.
WikiLeaks really threatens the establishment. You know, who is my other enemy here? There are some kind of a new Maoist or Trotskyite groups who claim, no, Assange is just an old-fashioned libertarian, that's not a true revolutionary theory, and so on and so on. What they are doing is that they are building an elite, which means a couple of dozen, maybe 100 members, and living a very comfortable life, like waiting for the big revolution. And they know very well that till that revolution happens, and of course it never will, you can calmly pursue your academic life. That's why I think there is a pseudo-radicalism which serves perfectly those in power. Like, I believe, like, you can demand bombing of the United States and a global revolution. Perfect. Nothing happens, you will be left alone. You do what Julian did, you just render public a little bit of a data, you are a threat, you know. Beware of this pseudo-radicalism, which make big threat, but because we all know that these big threats are inoperative, you know. The other thing that we should learn from Julian and general political situation now is how sadly our political space has changed, for example, in the last half century. When people ask me, but is Bernie Sanders not too crazy? I told them, but he is not in any sense even a socialist. He is measured by standards of half a century ago, when at least in Europe, social democratic welfare state more or less worked. He is a very moderate social democrat in that sense. And you know, a test that I made with my friends, every honest leftist in the United States will tell you that if you measure being left in a simple quantified way, like how much under your presidency was given to healthcare, support of the poor, students, and so on, now it will be a shock. You know who was the most leftist American president? Richard Nixon. Because there was Nixon. He did a lot, plus he made peace with China and so on. I totally believe, you know, the popular conspiracy theory is Kennedy, no? Was he murdered and so on. I think
Right.
maybe it's time to look and hear some Assange kind of new data. It would be wonderful to have them. Is Watergate really as innocent as it may appear? It was so clear that parts of the establishment were, especially the way he did it with China and so on, were not satisfied by Nixon. It's not as simple as that. I don't believe this is American ideology at its purest. It appears very critical. My God, the president was corrupted. And then the ideology is, look, what a great democracy we are. Two ordinary journalists can overthrow the mightiest man in the world. Can they? I would like to get the real story of what went behind there. So we also need something
curious about that.
called historical WikiLeaks, you know, that it looks into these myths like Watergate myth and so on, you know. Sorry, you bomb me with questions.
Right, yeah, you have to wonder what Watergate would have looked like going down had WikiLeaks been around and had people had the same degree of access to information sharing and networking and whatnot.
Yeah, precisely, yes. I think that
I think
also that don't blame only the don't fall into this trap of just praising the Democratic Party in the United States. Democratic Party was always historically more interventionist than Republican Party. Most of the military operations and so on were done by Democratic Party, many of them and so on. So, you know, there is a dark side of the Democratic Party. And it's as part of this demystification of Democratic Party that I support what Julian was doing.
Yeah, and that's why they hate him so much, is the raw truth rips off that smiley face that they put on the same kind of oppressive government that you describe in Russia and China. But, you know, in Russia and China, as you said, it's less threatening because they know that they are oppressed. People here don't know that they are oppressed, and WikiLeaks causes that to happen.
It would be better for us to have a Chinese regime. No, I wouldn't like to live there.
Right.
But let's be serious. If I were to choose, I would...
Right.
One of these three countries, my choice would still have been United States, you know, because the good thing about United States is that it's still relatively decentralized. They have so many civic life institutions and so on and so on. So Trump cannot simply behave like Hitler and centralize the government or whatever, you know. But he is doing the best. And that's, I think, the tragedy of Republican presidents. Their official ideology is often populist, you know, populist in the sense of more power to local states against Washington and so on. But they always end up strengthening the hold of Washington, precisely of centralized agencies and so on and so on. We live in very confused times, you know. We really lack what my friend Frederick Jameson called cognitive mapping, like just a general idea how things stand, where things are moving, and so on and so on. And again, this makes it all the more important to have people like Assange. He's a great help to what I hope it will be a new left, precisely because he doesn't do direct political analysis or program and so on and so on. He provides the basis and shows, as I already said at the beginning, one of the ways, which is to rip off, to prevent the establishment to control our digital grid. Because, you know, we see this clearly. I'm sure that also in our democratic West, those in power are prepared. You know what happened, you remember, from Egypt to anywhere. When there is some dissatisfaction, chaotic, the first thing those in power do is they cut off, first they cut off internet, cell phones, and so on and so on. This is who will control all this is crucial.
Yeah, one of my favorite Assange clips of all time was actually one you were in as well, that MIA event, and he was talking about the future of artificial intelligence and the way that it will, we've had for many years AI that can outsmart a grand chess master. So these systems are just going to get better and better at manipulating us, and really the only weapon that we have against that is truth, raw facts.
Yeah. But I remember that the whole story to be told, because we were there, I think, yes, with Mia, but in that relatively small room, because it was a big pressure to move us to some small, they wanted even smaller room. All of a sudden, there was a problem with space. Then they claimed, the organizers, that maybe there will not be enough interest. It's better that we put you into a small room. It was quite comical. But I think we touched there in the debate, yes, one crucial problem, which everybody is doing now. It's not just this, by everybody, all secret services and so on. It's not just digital control in the sense of whatever you do is traced, registered somewhere, you are manipulated. What worries me maybe even more, and I always return to this point, is this direct digitalization in the sense of direct connection, interface between our brain and digital network. Like, how, for example, the stupid example I always use, before his death, Stephen Hawking no longer needed his finger. His brain was directly wired. They already can connect your brain to machines, which, okay, still very primitive, but they can discern some basic orders. So Stephen Hawking thought forward, his wheelchair moved forward, and so on. But this changes the whole definition of a human being. Our basic human identity is, I'm here in my mind free, reality is out there. When this limit falls, on the one hand, yes, I gain extraordinary powers. It's almost like God. I think about something, it happens in reality. But, it goes also the other way around. My brain can be directly controlled, and so on and so on. And
just like the internet, in exactly the same way the internet happened. We gain all these powers, but there's this trade-off.
Yeah, it will be literally part of internet, and as such controlled and so on. And this opens up breathtaking perspectives. Maybe I wrote a comment in Egypt, but it's again easy to take these third world countries because then we can laugh at them. But I see this as ominous signs. In Egypt, for half a year, their parliament is debating a new law that would make it a big criminal offense to be an atheist. Now, listen what I said. It's prohibited already now to publicly declare or explain, propagate your atheist views. Now, as it says in the law, it's not only about what you speak in public, it's what about you think. They want, seriously, it's not a joke, to prohibit being an atheist. Now, of course, the big question is, how would you measure this? And I made a cynical proposal, neurotheology, this new subsection of brain sciences, when they're already pretty far. Again, it's primitive, but in some raw sense, it works. I put measuring apparatus on close to your brain, and I can determine safely when you have, now here problems enter, how precise is this, what kind of, but when you have some kind of religious experience, religious trance, mystical experience, and so on and so on. So it would be wonderful to have, wonderful in a terrifying sense, to live in a state where atheism is prohibited and you would have to go once a month to some state agency where they measure your brain, like, did you have a religious experience or not, whatever, and so on and so on. It's a joke, of course, but you know where it's not a joke? This is one of the worst surprises for me of those naive people like Sam Harris, Steven Pinker, who try to be basically optimistic, you know, like freedom is nonetheless progressive, less and less people go hungry, whatever you want. You know, in what sense, what are the options here? I mean, what can develop with these subtle forms of control and so on and so on? It's exploding. So again, I am unfortunately not such an you know what's their story? And here we, partisans of Assange, should reply. You know, their story, it may appear convincing, but look at the numbers. This is, I think, Steven Pinker in his last book, For Enlightenment, whatever. Look at the numbers. Even in the poorest African country, poverty is slowly diminishing. For the first time in the history of humanity, obesity is a greater problem than hunger, and so on, all those data. Yeah, but you know, we should go further than this and look at potential dangers and tendencies. My first answer is move 100 to 1900. Exactly the same point could have been made. Look, Europe in 1900 and United States. Look, you could say, for half a century, we had worldwide progress. No, okay, some colonial wars, but no big wars. Extraordinary progress of democracy, welfare, and so on and so on. What could go wrong? Yes, then you had World War I, which was a mega shock. And I see some ominous parallels between World War I, pre-World War I situation and our situation today. Exactly in that time, the problem was that the British world empire, its descent, its disintegration began. You had new powers like Germany, mostly, also non-clear status of Russia. And of course, First World War was about this new distribution of power in a multi-centric world. Are we not today in exactly the same situation? The American century is over. We have, okay, economically, not so much Russia, more politically, but China and so on, India. And we live in dangerous times because I think we don't have new, my God, how should I call this? New unwritten rules of how you deal. You know, in Cold War, there were clear rules. You don't intervene there militarily and so on. And it worked. Today, we don't have these rules. And I really think that we live in a dangerous time. Of course, we don't believe there could be a war, but nobody really believed it also in the case of the World War I. While everybody was getting ready for it, in the same way as today, my God, we are getting ready for it. So that's why, again, we desperately need things like WikiLeaks to tell us things, the new arms race and all that, you know.
Yeah, it's the greater, the more godlike powers that these organizations get. You know, we've got new plutocrats just emerging out of Silicon Valley and stuff, just out of the blue, who never even existed before. There's like this. I mean, people are.
That's also, and now I will tell you something that many leftists will not like. I generally support George Soros, his fight against this new European anti-immigrant right. But nonetheless, I saw a year ago when an interview with him where he claimed that how it would be good for Europe if 1 million more people move from Middle East refugees, no? And I said, okay, he is doing a great work in fighting racism and so on. But my God, is this normal that a big wealthy guy is planning moving million people here, there, and so on and so on? Where are the local people to decide about this? And then we wonder that Orban is winning in Hungary and so on. You know, that's my big worry about this politically correct left. It's so elitist. I really worry about it. I think we live, again, internationally, nationally, in a very dangerous moment. And again, we need WikiLeaks to give us the data. And all the best to Julian. All the best to Julian. I just wish him, I hope at least he has TV. If I were to be him, I would try to enjoy life. But another thing, speaking about enjoying life, that I should tell you, people should know this. You know how desperate was it for him? He told me once this, when he still at least had normal communications, it was possible for friends to visit him and so on. You know that there is no kitchen in the embassy, no? So somebody has to bring food to him, no? So friends were bringing him regularly some meals from, I don't know, local there, Chinese, whatever, restaurant. But then he got hints from his friends that, you see, that's his daily, that was when he was happier, his daily life. You know that friends hinted at him that British Secret Service is observing that, and their plan is to poison food a little bit in the restaurant, not to kill him, just to make him go to the hospital, where bam, they catch him, you know. That's his daily life. And I don't even imagine, you know, I'm a very material, concrete person. Like now that only lawyers can visit him, not every day. What does he eat? How does he organize his daily bread? I mean, this is in the secret, because I repeat, there is no kitchen there, you know. And who brings him food and so on? There must be some solution, but here I think we should also ruthlessly, why not? We are right here. Manipulate at this level, raise sympathy for him. You know how many people even didn't know what embassy is there? They thought it must be a nice villa with a nice garden. No, it's on the same floor, one of the two apartments. It's not what you associate usually with embassy, you know. People should know these concrete details. People identify, sympathize with all this, no? Are we already over? What's the hour now?
No, our next guest is running late. So if you have more thoughts that you would like to share about WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, if you have time, we would be delighted to have you keep going.
No, I'm sorry. I have some obligation, but I will try to say something. Yes, that the key thing is, I think, to maintain in your view both opposites. On the one hand, this personal sympathy for Julian there, and again, always be aware when you read some bad news about him. Always be aware of what a gigantic psychological warfare, information, intelligence activity is behind this. So nothing is innocent here. Even this neutral data, like he behaves a little bit in a rough way and so on, which didn't strike me at any point, incidentally. And when people say he is authoritarian, I wouldn't say authoritarian, but wait a minute. Running WikiLeaks is not it's not a grassroots democratic movement, you know. There are so many things which has to remain secret and so on and so on. It is a people's secret service, no? That's one thing, but also my message, bear in mind the general consequences, implications, and so on and so on. This is not just a case of a crazy guy who wanted people to know more about secret services. This is about all of us, what lives we will live in. I think that I'm not a utopian here. In the crazy world that it is today, we need spy services, protection against violent attacks, and so on and so on. But unfortunately, we cannot fully trust those in power. So we need just a minimal transparency also of those in power. What they are doing, we cannot trust them. I remember I was at some round table on BBC News at 10 when somebody was just saying, but this is normal spy operation. And then a friend of Julian, or was it Chelsea Manning, I don't know, simply said, but look, the data show what information CIA was gathering in Brazil. It was not some defense information. It was about private lives of the executives of Brazilian oil company, probably to blackmail them and so on and so on. You know, we should get to know all this. So many things are happening, we don't know it. And that's even the philosophical lesson of this, how precisely when people today feel free in the sense of, okay, there is a crisis, maybe I don't get a job, but I'm free to do this, to do that, and so on and so on. We are controlled more than ever. That this freedom, personal freedom, is deceiving. That's the message. Without this, we are lost.
Slavoj Zizek, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and hope it's not the... Incidentally, my dirty inquisitorial spy, where are you?
I am in Australia, but I'm from America.
Ah, you're in Australia, so you should curse me. I rather it's no, it's not too bad. It's early evening there, or what?
It's 8 p.m. here.
8 p.m.
Yeah, it's fine.
Have a good night, and please.
You too, Slavoj. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Thank you.